Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 19. Clue. Go. Feng Tian responded and couldn't be bothered with Xiang Shu anymore. Xiang Shu was the only one who could seek blessings for himself now. He looped his arm around Chen Xing on the spot and dragged him towards the entrance. At the moment Xiang Shu rushed forward, the two of them ducked below the belly of the black-armored general's horse and slid right across. Chen Xing still wanted to look back, but Feng Tian roared, "Don't look anymore!" Then turned Chen Xing's head back, picked him up, and ran. Within an instant, a distance of a zhang had already been pulled apart, but Chen Xing was still waving at Xiang Shu. "Xiang Shu! Run!" Xiang Shu brandished the scabbard, which gleamed with a brilliant light under the murky sky. The black-armored warrior spurred its horse forward to kill him, yet Xiang Shu drew a short distance away without facing it. Within the time taken for a short breath, the scabbard spun and got rid of an arm of the soldier that had rushed right in front of him. The scabbard was forged from pure steel mixed with gold and silver thread and was very difficult to use. However, in Xiang Shu's hands, it could be used as a soft whip. With just a slight shake, radiant light rays obscured the sky. The enemies regrouped before turning around to face Xiang Shu. It was dead silent. The warriors, who had their arms and legs cut off by Xiang Shu, began picking up their broken limbs from the floor and reconnected them to their bodies. The areas where their body parts joined together instantly produced soft and wriggling rotten meat that knit the broken sections back together again. "Who are you people?" Xiang Shu turned around, withdrew the scabbard, and blocked in front of the valley's entrance. His eyes were wide open as he roared angrily, "What relationship does Kajara have with you guys? Speak!" No one answered Xiang Shu. All he saw was the black-armored general raise his halberd. It was a signal to charge. The group of shadow warriors bowed one after another, and along with their skeletal war horses, they launched a fierce charge. At the entrance of the exorcism department in headquarters, Chen Xing felt like he knocked into something as he passed through an invisible wall. "Feng Tian, what do we do next? It's all up to you now." Chen Xing went underground and looked up at the plaque outside this residence. 4 large words that were reversed in the reflection of a mirror appeared on the plaque: "Everything has one origin." Outside the entrance stood another stone tablet, and on it, the words Han Dynasty Exorcism Department Headquarters were written. Chen Xing exclaimed, "Found it! This is great! I knew it'd be here." Chen Xing ran quickly into the exorcism department. The arrangement of decor inside was almost exactly the same as the description in the books he read, but there was no one in it. Although he knew that only drought fiends remained in the mirror world and that there were no more living people here, he still held on to the last thread of hope as he shouted, "Is anybody here? Is anybody here? Is anybody here? Is anybody here?" Only echoes replied to him. Feng Tian looked to his left and right, then shouted, "Are there any magic weapons here? Think of a way to push the enemies back." Chen Xing was incredibly anxious. There were still pursuing hordes outside. Even if there are magic weapons in the exorcism department, of what use would they be in the present? Within the main hall of the exorcism department, the plaque in the middle was still inscribed with the 4 reversed words, "Illuminate the vast expanse," while a glossy black and heavy sword was placed underneath it. Feng Tian went forward to take the sword, but he couldn't. It was as if the sword had been welded firmly to the sword stand. He ran to the 2nd floor and said, "Oh, this is bad. Tianqi, your protector's in a bit of a danger." Chen Xing followed him up in a hurry, only to see Xiang Shu running crazily in front of the charging enemies as he dashed towards the faraway valley. Xiang Shu understood very well that one could not try to meet a charging army head-on when resisting them, and that he had to at least pull apart a distance between them thrice. Exhaust the strength of the other side first before mounting a counterattack. However, if he continued rushing forward, he would rush straight to the entrance of the exorcism department, so he had to start circling around and engage in scuffles with the enemy. Suddenly, a 3-foot-long wooden arrow whistled as it flew over, bringing along with it a strong gale as it lodged itself into a tree. Xiang Shu looked up and saw that on the third floor of the exorcism department, Chen Xing and Feng Yunjun each occupied a corner as they operated a grounded repeating crossbow. Chen Xing shouted, "Lure the fiends over." Xiang Shu immediately rushed to the front of the exorcism department. Chen Xing exerted a lot of strength to activate the mechanism and turn the repeating crossbow. As soon as the two of them pulled the mechanism, a series of arrows shot out in rapid succession. Sharp arrows shot out of the arrow box with a rattle that fell upon level ground beyond the exorcism department's gate like a torrential downpour. Xiang Shu almost got pierced right through and roared, "Do you even know how to shoot arrows?" "Of course not." Chen Xing shouted, "Don't be so demanding. Make do a little." Feng Yunjun shouted, "I was the one who shot that arrow." "Never mind, I'll come down to help you ba." As he spoke, Feng Yunjun jumped down from the third floor, drew his Sen Luo saber, and went to support Xiang Shu. At this moment, the two of them finally experienced how formidable Chen Xing's eye-upiter was. Chen Xing shouted while he operated the repeating crossbow, shooting arrows while spinning around, yet none of the arrows shot out by the repeating cross was shot in vain no matter where it aimed at and no matter where the crossbow pointed towards. All of the arrows would lodge themselves into the heads of living corpses, and every shot took one head down. The black-armored general was actually stunned, and before the time taken for half an incense stick to burn past, his subordinates had all fallen to the ground. The general decisively spurred its horse to turn tail and run. Chen Xing operated the repeating crossbow and for his last arrow, he shouted, "Shu!" Chen Xing withdrew the crossbow and retreated, but accidentally stumbled in front of the crossbow and grabbed onto the trigger when he fell. The angle of the repeating crossbow deflected, and its arrow shot straight into the sky at an angle. Xiang Shu and Feng Yunjun kept their weapons at the same time, they watched the arc drawn out by the arrow. The general was riding its horse as it rushed out of the valley. The arrow flew over 100 steps and fell obliquely, then hit the helmet with a clang, snapping the general's neck such that its head whirled out into the air. Without saying another word, Xiang Shu rushed out. The general seemed to realize something and dashed over to grab its head, but Xiang Shu leapt into mid-air, spun around dashingly like he was playing kazoo, and kicked. Xiang Shu intercepted the general's head and sent it flying with a kick. Feng Yunjun chased after him, did a somersault with one hand on the ground, continued the relay by performing another kick, and kicked the head straight into the exorcism department. Chen Xing followed suit and kicked the head rolling down the stairs from the third floor. However, he had just kicked the head when his kick connected with a clang, and it hurt so much he howled in pain. That helmet was really too hard, it smashed through 2 staircase boards in a row and landed with a thud, rousing a cloud of dust. Xiang Shu and Feng Yunjun retreated safely into the exorcism department. The general had become a headless knight and was currently wandering around on horseback outside as it wanted to retrieve its head. Xiang Shu shook his scabbard out, yet the general didn't come and just left. Chen Xing went to the center of the hall and grabbed the sword. As he wielded it casually, the heavy iron sword began shining with a white light. Chen Xing. A circle of luminous incantation patterns appeared on the ground around the heavy iron sword. Xiang Shu and Feng Yunjun looked at the sword at the same time. Chen Xing had lifted it without any effort. He looked down at it with a baffled expression before throwing it to Xiang Shu. Xiang Shu caught it, swung the sword, and briefly brandished it with one hand. Just as he was about to run out to give chase, the headless general had already retreated out of the canyon. The three of them breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Chen Xing strutted over to sit on the couch in the exorcism department's main hall. With open arms and his 2 legs shaking, he said, "See? Didn't you still have to rely on me in the end?" Xiang Shu's 5 fingers convulsed slightly, then he took a deep breath. Feng Yunjun said, "This dear little brother really is amazing, it's just that, how are we supposed to get out now? Do you have an idea?" Chen Xing answered, "Let's take a break, I'm so tired. People have always been the ones to think of a way out. Since we could enter this place, then we'll definitely be able to go out too. Feng Yunjun picked up the head in the hall and pulled up the helmet, revealing the indigo blue face inside. Be careful, it might bite. Chen Xing reminded. Xiang Shu frowned and said calmly, this group doesn't seem like the usual drought fiends. After their limbs are chopped off, they can regenerate as long as they connect them back together. Why would such monsters appear here? Chen Xing thought about it for a bit, then answered, legend has it that there were many kinds of drought fiends. The living corpses we saw before this should be the lowest leveled kinds. This kind of warrior should be of a high level amongst them. Yi? Brother Feng, this face looks pretty handsome ma. Feng Yunjun took the helmet off and carefully carried the head, which faced the other two. The head was glowering with wide eyes, it kept opening its mouth and making all sorts of expressions, baring its white teeth as it twisted around forcefully with distorted facial features as it wanted to bite someone. Invite the head over, let me study it properly. Chen Xing said. So Feng Yunjun placed the head on the table. Chen Xing picked up a tree branch and poked its mouth. The branch snapped from being bit. He recalled that after he shot the group of warriors in their heads, that group of living corpses lost their ability to move, but as long as the head remained, even if it was separated from the body would still be able to move. In other words, if they were to split this head in half, then the headless knight wandering outside will. Chen Xing was studying the beautiful man's nose when a book was thrown onto his face. AI. Is that what you're looking for? Xiang Shu was already impatient from waiting. He had rummaged through the warehouse once and found a book that was filled with Han seal scripts. Seal scripts originated in the Qin dynasty and was generally used during official and formal occasions. It was a distorted font that was difficult to decipher. Nowadays, official script used the common language, and it was already very challenging for Hu people to study the official script, so they couldn't really understand seal scripts. The words here are all reversed. Chen Xing opened the book and said, it'll be too difficult to identify. Where did you get this from? A shelf in the basement. It's half written. Xiang Shu answered, only this book was special, you'll understand when you see it. As soon as Chen Xing opened the book, all he saw were simple seal scripts that meandered around like a Kai Oolong dragon, but it was clearly not inverted like all the other words within the mirror. It abided by the rules of the present world. What does that mean? This book was written here by someone from the present after entering the mirror world. Although Xiang Shu wasn't familiar with seal script books, he could recognize that it was unusual from the left and right opening pages of the book. Most of the books on the shelves started from the right, but only this book started from the left. Chen Xing muttered, this is a handwritten book from 299 years ago. Who left this record here? Read it. Xiang Shu said. Yongping lasted for 18 years, Humble Me has been in the human world for more than 300 years, and through these hundreds of years, I've traveled all over the divine land and finally found the Dinghai Pearl in Lake Baikal. Dinghai Pearl? The silence that fell on all magic was destined to be the final destination of all exorcists, and only the Dinghai Pearl alone could still release a surging flood of spiritual qi. Chen Xing. After obtaining this magic weapon, all records should have been destroyed. However, man proposes, but heaven disposes. For worldly affairs, 8 or 9 out of 10 attempts would not be successful. To be on guard in advance, this book will be hidden in the yin-yang mirror. If something were to suddenly occur. Never mind, Chen Xing muttered, one can only do one's best. The vicissitudes of life pass with merely a flick of the finger, so of what benefit would it be to plot for posthumous matters? Chen Xing flipped to the next page, but the last few pages had no words and only simple lines drawn in ink. From the looks of it, it seemed to be a map. His instinct reminded him that the records left behind in this book must have something to do with the silence that fell on all magic. This was left behind by one of my exorcist predecessors. Chen Xing said to the other two after he finished reading, I don't know why he did this, but he must know the truth behind the silence that fell on all magic. The three of them pondered for a long while. Xiang Shu frowned, it didn't mention the drought fiends. Chen Xing shook his head, it didn't. Feng Yunjun said, so he was the one who created the mirror world. Chen Xing nodded, perhaps. Judging from this point in time, the book was written the year after silence fell on all magic. During that year, all the spiritual qi of heaven and earth had already disappeared, but this person found a magic weapon called Dinghai Pearl, and used it to restore his mana. As he spoke, he looked all around him as he scrutinized the space the three of them were in. He continued, then, he activated the yin-yang mirror and created the mirror world that we're in now, then left behind an unfinished book in the mirror. Xiang Shu flipped through the last few maps at the back of the book. He studied the last page. Simple mountains, rivers, and lakes were drawn there, without any text marking the locations. No, Xiang Shu frowned deeply, that's not right, unless you made a mistake in your explanation. Chen Xing. That's the meaning behind what was written in the book. Chen Xing explained, it's very reasonable. All mana in the world was gone, this senior found the Dinghai Pearl, and it was the key to restoring mana. Wait, no. Chen Xing was now aware of a problem as well, but he couldn't say exactly why. Feng Yunjun said, in the book, it was said that he had been searching for the Dinghai Pearl for hundreds of years. Mana existed in the human world back then, and the spiritual qi of heaven and earth hadn't disappeared yet. Even if he knew the reason behind the disappearance, how would he have been able to foresee the future hundreds of years ago and start searching for the Dinghai Pearl in advance? Chen Xing stopped talking. Where's the Dinghai Pearl? Xiang Shu asked. Chen Xing shrugged with a baffled expression. I think it's highly unlikely for it to be in the mirror. Xiang Shu continued. Chen Xing admitted that point. Xiang Shu rummaged through the last three maps at the back of the book and said, maybe it's in one of the places in these three maps. Strange, what did he do after he got the Dinghai Pearl? Could it have been snatched again by someone else? That's the next clue. Chen Xing took a deep breath, there's finally a lead now. This is great, our trip here wasn't made in vain. But we'll need to think of a way to retrieve the yin-yang mirror first. Now that it's in the hands of Brother Feng's brother, it's a little dangerous. Chen Xing glanced at Feng Yunjun, and the three of them understood the situation implicitly at the same time. After connecting the pieces together, they could almost reconstruct the timeline of what had happened. Firstly, after silence fell on all magic, this exorcist predecessor left behind this powerful magic weapon, the yin-yang mirror, in Chang'an's exorcism department headquarters. While the Feng family was revamping Mount Song and constructing the Songbei residence as an extension on the old site of the exorcism department, they had likely obtained the mirror due to a freak combination of coincidences. But what about the appearance of the drought fiends? There were a lot of answers that they could only obtain after asking Feng Tian. Chen Xing got up immediately, kept the book and said, where did you find this? Take me there. Feng Yunjun was about to get up and follow when Xiang Shu made a gesture. Feng Yunjun knew that Xiang Shu meant that he had to avoid arousing suspicion, so he could only say, I'll keep guard up here. Chen Xing quickly went down to the underground warehouse. Compared to the small warehouse after Zifeng Bank was rebuilt, this warehouse was obviously much more spacious. It was filled with weapons and bookshelves, and only the weapon shelves were empty. Xiang Shu pointed at a shelf. Chen Xing found an ordinary bronze mirror, lit up the indoor oil lamp, and began looking through the bookshelves to conduct his search. It's so complete. Chen Xing had read quite a lot of incomplete books at his Shifu's place that were taken from the exorcism department. The department had records of many powerful magic weapons in the world. Over the years, they were passed down to Chen Xing, but they had long been deficient. Now, all of the magic weapons introductions were in front of him, so Chen Xing's spirit felt refreshed in an instant. His curiosity was greatly satisfied now, and he couldn't care about anything else for the moment. Read first, think later. Crimson Cloud Gauze, Exorcising Pestle, Heart lamp? Heart lamp. Chen Xing didn't expect that there would actually be an ancient record of the heart lamp here. In order to prevent traditional arts from being lost, great exorcists of past dynasties specifically left behind transcribed copies. This way, even if wars or unexpected incidents were to break out, exorcists who inherited the magic weapons could still return to the department to retrieve the mantras of the magic weapons and control them again. However, attributes of the heart lamp had always been subjected to heated debate. People often believed that it would only appear in an age when demons are about to descend, and the heart lamp was the only phantom spiritual treasure in the world that had no physical form. Controversies still surrounded the question of whether it should truly be considered a magic weapon or not. Chen Xing instantly reacted as if he had obtained the most precious of treasures. He tossed the matter regarding the yin-yang mirror to the back of his mind first, then began reading 10 lines at a glance as he browsed through the bamboo slips. The usage of the heart lamp was recorded on this bamboo slip. It included 3 kinds of powers: expelling demons, exorcism, and the clear guard of one's heart. And most importantly, just as what his Shifu said, the heart lamp was least affected by the silence of all magic in the present world. It was because the heart lamp uses the 3 Huns and 7 POS as the source of its power, and it exists in the soul, which is the root of all human beings. When this magic weapon is used, the heart lamp will light up and illuminate the vast expanse, just like sparks that start prairie fires. It would rouse the spiritual chi of the heavens and earth and gather an even stronger power for exorcising demons. When Shifu lectured him on the mysteries behind the heart lamp, he did so with a mere smattering of knowledge. Now that Chen Xing finally found the lone book that remained, that is to say, ever since the spiritual chi of the heaven and earth dried up, he found that the 3 mystical powers of the heart lamp, though weak, could still be used. One point was elucidated even more clearly in the lone book: the heart lamp could only protect all things in the world from being encroached upon by demonic hindrances and expel evil spirits, but it couldn't slay demons directly, let alone be used to hurt people. In a certain sense, this magic weapon was born just to restrain demons. When used to deal with evil things, its light could stab the enemy, but it couldn't do anything to people. At most it would only be able to emit some light to scare people away. Take it out, read it next time. Xiang Shu reminded. Yin-yang mirror. Chen Xing snapped out of his stupor. He started inspecting the books from front to back, and finally pulled out a bamboo scroll from the row of heaven magic weapons, then unfurled it. Yin-yang mirror, a magic weapon of ancient times. Able to create stone rubs of anything in the world, powered by the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, inscriptions are engraved at the back. Xiang Shu held up a lamp beside him. Chen Xing roughly read through the description for the usage of the magic weapon and frowned, but how is this yin-yang mirror activated exactly? Unless, as he spoke, he was vaguely reminded of a key point that he had deduced beforehand: resentment. In order for magic weapons in the world to unleash its powers, it must absorb spiritual chi of the heavens and earth. However, this so-called spiritual chi is nothing more than the circulation of abundant power of heaven and earth. Resentment left behind after death theoretically had the same source as spiritual chi, they were just presented in different ways. Spiritual chi is clear, while resentment is turbid, analogous to the common saying that there are 2 types of chis of heaven and earth: clear and turbid. Evil arts once existed, they either indulged in fetal blood practices or refined human souls, and it was their way of controlling resentment. And the one holding the mirror had clearly found a way to utilize resentment. Perhaps they had refined this magic weapon on a battlefield with heavy casualties, then took it for their own use. It was just perfect for them to store living corpses in that they couldn't keep anywhere else. The yin-yang mirror has 2 sides and 1 body. The yang side is in the human world, while the yin side is in the mirror world. In order to reopen the path back to reality, you must find the yin side in this world. Chen Xing finished reading the instructions on its usage. The mirror itself had already been refined, it was very simple to activate, and that was of no problem to him. It was just difficult to find where it was hidden. Xiang Shu flicked the heavy dark steel sword in his hands. A blunt, metallic sound rang out, and he motioned for Chen Xing to look. "And what's this?" Xiang Shu asked. Chen Xing got Xiang Shu to hold it out and inspected the patterns on the sword. He said, "The 9 syllables of Tao are engraved on it. Maybe it's used for subduing demons." Xiang Shu, this sword wasn't found in the Feng family's secret warehouse, only a scabbard was there. As he spoke, Xiang Shu inserted the sword into the scabbard. It was a perfect fit. Chen Xing said, baffled, "I'm not sure about it either. I've never seen any descriptions related to this weapon before. The yin-yang mirror creates stone rubs of the present world, but it's limited by one's strength. The more complex the rubbings are, the more mana would be required. If my expectations aren't off, the mirror world should only comprise of Chang'an City, and it may not even comprise the entire Chang'an. Supposing that this sword is a magic weapon as well, it would be very difficult for the yin-yang mirror to create stone rubbings of other magic weapons. The spiritual power required would be too much after all." Chen Xing held up the lamp again and began searching through the shelves, proving that there was indeed nothing. But there was a bamboo slip marked with the words Sen Luo Wan Xiang. It was the description of the treasure knife. Chen Xing had seen it before at his Shifu's place, so he took it down as he wanted to pass it to Feng Qianjun. Xiang Shu looked down to check the sword and asked, "Can this be brought back to the present world?" Chen Xing answered, "That's hard to say. Do you like it? If you like it, then keep it ba. It belongs to the exorcism department anyway. I'll give it to you as the head of the department. Even if it doesn't have any spiritual power, it can be used to hit other people. Don't use it to hit me." Xiang Shu made a gesture, and Chen Xing dodged straight away, but Xiang Shu just ended up turning around. Chen Xing understood Xiang Shu was just teasing him, and he thought, "You can actually crack jokes? I really misjudged you." "Guys," Feng Qianjun said from upstairs, "are you two done? I think it's better for you both to come up and take a look. We're in trouble." Xiang Shu carried the sword along with its scabbard on his back and went up to the next floor in a few steps. Chen Xing chased after him and threw the bamboo slip that recorded Sen Luo in the universe to Feng Qianjun. Feng Qianjun didn't have time to read through it in detail before he took the two up to the 3rd floor in a hurry. Whether or not it was day or night could not be distinguished by looking at the dark and gloomy sky outside. Both sides of the Mount Song Gorge were packed densely with living corpses. Close to 100,000 living corpses surrounded the headquarters of the exorcism department, while shadow warriors with arrows knocked on their bows stood on the highlands. The headless knight rode its horse high atop Mount Song as it faced the headquarters of the exorcism department. End chapter. Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 20. Headquarters. Present world Chang'an, during the 4th of the 5th night watch periods, within Viang Palace's sleeping chambers. It is indeed as your majesty expected. The great Chan Yu, Shulukong, and Chen Xing entered the Feng family this afternoon. In the evening, for some reason, the Feng family swarmed out in full strength and began a search throughout the city, a military officer said, to look for what your majesty called Xiang Shu. Fu Jian was awakened in the middle of the night. Dressed in an unlined garment as he sat on a couch outside his sleeping chambers, he was suppressing a lot of anger as he looked at the military officer with a face full of doubt. The military officer continued, "This subordinate dispatched 10 covered investigators to question the servants of the Feng family and scouted about along the street, and managed to find Xiang Shu before them. By great fortune, we accomplished our mission." This fellow was pacing back and forth outside a steamed bun shop in the dark. In front of Fu Jian stood a mongrel with a small mirror in its mouth, and it was currently wagging its tail in front of Fu Jian. Some saliva got on the mirror. "Your humble general, I wanted to wipe it clean, but this dog refused to let go of it no matter what." When the military officer found Xiang Shu, he saw an antique mirror, so he thought himself clever by inferring the rest of the story himself. Princess King He's beloved mirror must have been snatched away by a dog called Xiang Shu, which was why Fu Jian made such a big fuss over searching the city. Fu Jian. The military officer bowed, stepped back, and the dog looked to its left and right with a puzzled expression. Fu Jian, Tuibayan didn't instruct you on whether to look for a dog or a person. The military officer looked baffled as he answered, Lord Tuiba just said to find a fellow named Xiang Shu. In the Xianbei language, fellow could refer to people, dogs, or even objects. Tuibayan's intention was to look for someone called Xiang Shu, so his subordinates thought they were supposed to look for a person at first. They only knew it was a dog after questioning the servants of the Feng family, so they quickly brought it back to Fu Jian after finding it. Ever since Feng Qianjun grabbed that dog back, he didn't know its other name and only heard Chen Xing call it Xiang Shu before, so he just always called it Xiang Shu, Xiang Shu. When Feng Qianye's magic weapon got snatched, and he sent their family out to search for it, they were all holding lamps and shouting Xiang Shu as well, which just so happened to be overheard by the imperial military officers. Fu Jian roared angrily, idiots! A bunch of idiots! Where's Tuibayan? The military officer got a fright and quickly said, General, he's not back yet. Fu Jian seized the mirror in one lightning move, and that dog still bared its teeth as it wanted to snatch it back from him. Fu Jian casually threw the mirror onto the table. He didn't want to blow up in the middle of the night, so he just dismissed the officer to continue searching. Princess Dinghai had been awakened by the clamor as well. She stretched lazily from behind the screen, revealing her lithe figure. Fu Jian wrapped an outer robe around him and smoothed out his messy hair. With his rough, hair chest exposed, he exhaled and wore a pair of wooden clogs. They haven't been found yet. Dinghai came out bleary-eyed and asked, Where is your majesty going? Fu Jian answered, The study. Meeting Wang Zi to talk about something, I'm awake anyway. Call someone over to send this dog away. Princess Dinghai said, It's so pitiful though, let it sleep behind the screen for one night bay. So Fu Jian just took a robe, threw it behind the screen and chased the dog over. The dog was evidently quite tired too, so it lay behind the screen to sleep. After Fu Jian left, Princess Dinghai saw the mirror on the table. She frowned and grasped it gently, studying it carefully in her hands. In the mirror world, the three of them stood at a high ground in the exorcism department as they faced the mountain of living corpses. Not a single sound could be heard beyond the canyon. They dare not come too close, Xiang Shu said, Why? Feng Qianjun spread out the bamboo slip and held it up under the sunlight to study it, then he took the bronze mirror and began reading it. Because the head is with us. Chen Xing looked into the distance and guessed. Xiang Shu frowned, No, the headless general stopped chasing us when it reached the entrance, remember when we left the palace. With this reminder, Chen Xing suddenly recalled that when they left Viang Palace, he had felt as if he had passed through an invisible wall, and he had the same sensation when he had rushed into the exorcism department. Defense walls, Chen Xing remembered a record in an ancient text he read. Defense walls were established here with the help of magic weapons or sacred tools. Where's that magic weapon? Chen Xing had read about it in a book before. Powerful magic weapons and sacred tools, combined with an esoteric exorcism array, can establish invisible walls used to ward off foreign enemies. But they have never seen a single magic weapon ever since they entered the exorcism department. After all, it would be very difficult to use the yin-yang mirror to create stone rubbings of magic weapons in the present world. The only thing they saw before that could possibly be a magic weapon or sacred tool would be. Chen Xing and Xiang Shu looked at the sword that Xiang Shu was holding at the same time. Xiang Shu weighed the blunt sword in his hands and said in a low voice, In that case, enemies shouldn't be able to attack this place for now. Yet Chen Xing's expression changed. He was incredibly anxious as he suppressed his voice, That's not necessarily true, Brother Feng. Stop reading. Look. The living corpse soldiers everywhere seemed to have received an invisible signal, and all of them began knocking their bows as they pointed them at the 3-story building of the exorcism department headquarters. Feng Yunjun looked up and murmured, "Oh, that's not good, find a place to take cover." Within a split second, close to 100,000 wooden arrows whooshed into the air and blotted out the sky, then turned and began raining down on the middle of the canyon like a rainstorm. Xiang Shu lunged at Chen Xing almost at the same time, and they rolled down the stairs. Feng Yunjun followed close behind, running sideways as he went down to the second floor. With a loud rumble, 100,000 flying arrows that carried the force of an arrow cluster weighing more than 10,000 jin instantly crushed the third floor, yet the momentum of the arrows didn't fade, and it took the second floor down along with the third one as well. "What do we do?" Chen Xing shouted. Xiang Shu kicked a table, and the table on the first floor flipped into mid-air to shield the top of their heads. Feng Yunjun was still looking down at the bamboo slip, and Chen Xing shouted, "Stop reading! Run first!" Xiang Shu shouted, "Can we stop them if I take this sword out?" "No." Chen Xing shouted, "Once it leaves the array here, the defense walls will disappear and lose their effectiveness." Feng Yunjun finally snapped out of his reverie and shouted, "Go underground!" Xiang Shu, "No. We'll get buried alive." Chen Xing, "It's no use. Once the array gets destroyed, then." Xiang Shu, "Take the head with you, go." On all four sides of the canyon, the second wave of flying arrows pointed to the sky, and then all of them were released at the same time. The decrepit exorcism department collapsed just like that. Within the instant when smoke and dust curled into the air, Xiang Shu took Chen Xing along and rushed out along the entrance with Feng Yunjun. All of the pursuers throughout the entire valley instantaneously turned to look at the same direction at the same time, then began chasing after them. The scene was truly too spectacular. Thousands of living corpses were like a tsunami that swept through the entire valley as they scrambled over one another. Feng Yunjun held the head up with one hand, and Chen Xing's feet almost left the ground from being dragged along by Xiang Shu in a mad dash along the street as they ran for their lives. "Feng Yunjun, I'd suggest throwing this head away or destroying it. Look at how relentless their pursuit is, maybe they want to." "Xiang Shu, do whatever you want. Try destroying it." The three of them had just run past an intersection on the street when another 1,000 or so living corpses suddenly rushed out of an alley. Chen Xing resolutely raised his hand and emitted a burst of bright light, which rooted ordinary living corpses dressed in ragged garments with a blast. Feng Yunjun threw the head away, drew his knife, and was about to hack the living corpse's head into two when a black vapor suddenly appeared in the air. It shot over like a meteor and curled around the head, then along with a surging black flame, flew back towards the living corpse's general. Feng Yunjun. Feng Yunjun had been caught completely unprepared and was stunned on the spot when the head was snatched away. "What is that?" Xiang Shu looked up at the sky. Chen Xing stopped, looked up, and murmured, "I don't know." Strangeness pervaded this mirror world at all times. Feng Yunjun said, "Where do we go now?" Xiang Shu, "The palace." Then he patted Chen Xing's back and said in a low voice, "If what you said was right, there should be another wall of some sort in the palace." "Yes." Chen Xing seemed to have awakened from a dream, "Run towards the palace. Quickly." The three of them immediately vaulted onto a roof. Feng Yunjun looked up, only to see that the black armored general had retrieved its head and was currently lining up its troops. The dark mass of troops didn't seem to have any intention of letting them go. "What do they want to do?" Feng Yunjun frowned. Xiang Shu shrugged, then asked Chen Xing, "Why can your light drive away ordinary living corpses but not the shadow warriors?" "I don't know ah." Chen Xing finally couldn't stand it anymore and blew his top. "Why, what, how, what's this, what's that, what does this do, what does that do, I'm very confused too, all right. Why are you asking me all the questions?" Xiang Shu. "Feng Yunjun, come on. They're going to charge." So Xiang Shu could only pick Chen Xing up, clasping him under his arms as he leapt across roofs and vaulted over walls with Feng Yunjun. Chen Xing was practically facing the wind with 2 rows of tears streaming down his face. When will he be able to find the Dinghai pearl and restore his mana? He has just been dragging the other 2 down the entire way. Living corpses are the lowest leveled ones. Chen Xing was still trying his best to answer Xiang Shu questions while being carried as they were fleeing. Shadow warriors may have powered up after cultivating, so they aren't as afraid of the light. The night is their boss, and it has demonic powers too. If silence hadn't fallen on all magic in the world, the heart lamp would definitely be able to deal with them, but I have no way of doing so right now. Refinement. I get it. Why the living corpses are being reared in the mirrors Chang'an city. The enemies are thinking of a way to refine them. Ordinary living corpses with the weakest combat strength made up the bulk of the enemies here. Looking at the situation, there should be at least hundreds of thousands of them. Next in rank would be the shadow warriors, and if that was right, the plentiful, dense resentment within the mirror should be used to nourish these living corpses and increasingly strengthen them. If they hadn't discovered the secret behind the mirror world, then in time to come, this place would have a shadow army with hundreds of thousands of soldiers who don't fear death, don't fear pain, and only know how to slaughter. With a buzz, Chen Xing felt like he had once again passed through an invisible wall. The 3 of them jumped down from Viang Palace's outer wall and landed in the Imperial Garden. Got it, find the mirror. Xiang Shu commanded. Feng Yunjun, split up to search for it. Wait. Feng Yunjun said, give me some time, let me finish reading this bamboo slip. Xiang Shu, can't you talk about it when we get back? Feng Yunjun said, it might help. Chen Xing motioned to Xiang Shu to let Feng Yunjun give it a try, so Xiang Shu had to drop it. He gestured for Chen Xing to follow Feng Yunjun, while he went to search for the physical body of the yin-yang mirror in the mirror world. Feng Yunjun entered a hall, unfurled the bamboo slip, and sat down in front of a bronze mirror to study it carefully. Chen Xing knew that the cultivation method of the magic weapon was written on it. Sen Luo Wanxiang was the Feng family's heirloom, so it originally had a resonance with those from Feng Yunjun's family. All that was recorded on this bamboo slip were secret arts used to guide one's inner force throughout the entire body's meridians to then absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth before injecting it into the sacred weapon. Feng Yunjun had been practicing martial arts since he was young, so naturally, he would be so familiar with this to the point that he couldn't be any more familiar with it, but Chen Xing cautioned, right now, the most important component, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, is missing. So even if you do learn how to wield the Sen Luo knife, you wouldn't be able to awaken its power. But it won't hurt to give it a try, Feng Yunjun stated. What if it works? Chen Xing couldn't bear to deal him a blow. Feng Yunjun pressed the meridians on his arm with his left hand in turn. Could you use the heart lamp's power to help me like how you assisted the great Chan Yu? Chen Xing, I think it's a bit of a mystery. Feng Yunjun, where does the mystery lay? Chen Xing, the mystery lies in the fact that the heart lamp doesn't seem to want to pay attention to you, so I can't do anything about it either. At that moment, Chen Xing heard the sound of hooves striking the ground outside the palace. The dense mass of living corpse army had already surrounded the whole palace. Xiang Shu hadn't found the yin-yang mirror yet, but the defense walls were still active, so the enemies should not be able to rush in for now. What he was afraid of was that they would repeat their previous tactic and release tens of thousands of arrows at them again. But the bricks and tiles of the palace were sturdier than those of the exorcism departments after all. He just didn't know how long they would last. Sen Luo Wanxiang, there were 2 at first, Feng Yunjun said solemnly. One was called Sen Luo, while the other was called Wanxiang, and they were only cast into one later on. My ancestors chose to build Zifeng Bank on Mount Song because they wanted to guard the exorcism department that once existed there. Chen Xing knew that Feng Yunjun had his own resolution and would unlikely give up under his persuasion, so he could only ask, did your older brother know that the yin-yang mirror was placed in the warehouse? Feng Yunjun finished reading the bamboo slip and put it aside. He answered, he knew everything. The one who activated the yin-yang mirror and threw us into the mirror world was him. Chen Xing. Feng Yunjun sighed, and Chen Xing comforted him. Fu Jian already knows, he just doesn't want to lay a finger on you guys before obtaining enough evidence. Go back and persuade him ba. I have to retrieve the yin-yang mirror, then slowly think of a way later to eliminate the resentment in it. Feng Yunjun left 5 fingers pressed down on the meridians of his right arm in turn, then pressed on a spot in front of his shoulder, chest, then lower abdomen. He got up, drew the Sen Luo knife, and tried brandishing it horizontally. Let me try. Feng Yunjun said. Chen Xing didn't believe that Feng Yunjun could awaken Sen Luo Wanxiang under such circumstances at first, but Feng Yunjun stood with his knife horizontally across in front of him. He wielded the knife with his right hand, while stroking it slowly across with his left. Within an instant, an imperceptible flow in the yin wind in the air seemed to stir. Wait! Chen Xing shouted immediately, stop! Brother Feng! Chen Xing's soul scattered from fright, but he had figured out the key. The Sen Luo knife could be awakened, but the problem was that when Feng Yunjun utilizes his arts, it would have no way of luring the spiritual qi of heaven and earth over. Instead, what would take its place would be the abundant resentment in the mirror world. Once resentment was introduced into the Sen Luo knife, what may happen next would simply be unthinkable. Chen Xing wanted to seize the Sen Luo knife, but Feng Yunjun turned a deaf ear to him. The black flames that surrounded his body suddenly soared into the air, spun around rapidly, and wound around his body, blocking Chen Xing from getting close. Within a split second, Feng Yunjun cried out in pain while his eyes turned bloodshot. The yin wind engulfed him, producing howls of anguish beside him. This is resentment. Chen Xing shouted, you'll suffer a backlash. While he was being overwhelmed by everything that was happening around him, Chen Xing recalled that one of the usages of the heart lamp was to expel demons. Right when he was lighting up his heart lamp, Xiang Shu had already rushed to the fore of the hall. Chen Xing said, stop him. Protector. No, don't use your sword. You'll kill him. So Xiang Shu had to change his weapon. He lifted up a table with one hand and slammed it harshly onto Feng Yunjun's back. Feng Yunjun returned the hit with his knife. Xiang Shu's heavy iron sword was unsheathed and met the Sen Luo knife head-on. Feng Yunjun dropped his long knife at once, and it fell to the ground with a clang. Then Chen Xing immediately shouted, expel! And emitted a scorching light with one hand before pressing it against Feng Yunjun's forehead. A white light burst out with a blast. Feng Yunjun fell to his knees, and his gaze steadied, a bewildered expression appearing on his face. Chen Xing got such a huge fright that he choked. For a very brief moment, he thought that Feng Yunjun was going to lose control. You almost got possessed. Chen Xing said. Xiang Shu said in disbelief, what happened this time? I don't know. Okay, I do know, Chen Xing explained, I'll talk about it later. Have you found it? Xiang Shu turned around. Chen Xing quickly picked up the Sen Luo knife and pulled Feng Yunjun up, then chased after Xiang Shu. They crossed through a long corridor before arriving in the main hall and only saw a wooden frame placed in front of the emperor's throne. A simple mirror was placed on it. It was the yin-yang mirror. Chen Xing rushed forward to check, but Xiang Shu was full of doubts as he studied Feng Yunjun. Feng Yunjun waved his hand to signal that he was fine. He extended a hand, so Xiang Shu took the Sen Luo knife and handed it to him. Feng Yunjun, for a moment just now, it was as if there was a voice ringing out next to my ear that kept saying kill, kill. Xiang Shu frowned and watched Feng Yunjun. Feng Yunjun nodded, then slowly said, I just wanted to find something to kill with and have a good time. Is that what getting possessed is like? You have obsessions in your heart. Chen Xing inspected the yin-yang mirror and explained to Feng Yunjun, so it would be taken advantage of by resentment. Resentment in the world is flourishing, so it would gradually breed demons. Demons can control people's hearts and continuously magnify the obsession in your heart. At the very end, you would fall into a never-ending cycle of slaughter, never to break free for all of eternity. That's getting possessed. Feng Yunjun covered his forehead with an outstretched hand, his thumb and middle finger pressing against his temples on both sides. Fortunately, your heart lamp woke me up like a streak of lightning. Chen Xing said, it had occurred so suddenly. I've only read about it in a book that the heart lamp can temporarily expel resentment. Anyway, you. Xiang Shu roughly understood what had happened. Suddenly, they heard a boom, and the entire hall began to shake. It was the sound of arrows landing on the tiles above. Can we get out of here? Xiang Shu, we're running out of time. I'll try, Chen Xing rolled his sleeves up and said, I can't guarantee that it'll succeed. The yin-yang mirror is also a magic weapon driven by resentment. In order to activate it, I must accept the resentment. When I pick it up to use it later, the defense walls outside will disappear, and the two of you must protect me then. Xiang Shu, can't you just leave it where it is when you use it? Must you pick it up? Chen Xing, I can't. Are you sure you want to listen to my explanation right now? Feng Yunjun, hurry. Stop fighting. The top of the hall is about to collapse. Xiang Shu said impatiently, do it, do it. The tiles above the main hall of Viang Palace began falling apart layer by layer. Chen Xing took a deep breath. This was his first time using magic after leaving the mountain. No, it was his first time using magic in his whole life. Emitting light doesn't count. He often read in ancient texts about how exorcists would rely on magic weapons to move about freely in both the sky and the earth. Now that it was his turn, he felt extremely nervous. In an instant, white light lit up from both of Chen Xing's palms. His left palm turned over as the yang side, while his right hand clenched to form the yin side. They revolved around the yin-yang mirror while he silently recited incantations in his mind and told himself that he must succeed. The yin-yang mirror reacted instantly, a winding black vapor burst forth from it at once and slowly rose from his palms. It works. Chen Xing thought. However, the heart lamp's magic was extremely clear, while the resentment in the yin-yang mirror was extremely muddy. The two were mutually exclusive and started resisting each other. The black vapor from the yin-yang mirror began spreading all over Chen Xing's body and ruthlessly engulfed him within a black flame. Feng Yunjun and Xiang Shu watched Chen Xing and saw that his eyes turned slightly blood red. Feng Yunjun muttered, "Are you okay?" Tianqi. Countless noises rang out next to Chen Xing's ears, the clearest of which was his own voice. Why, must I only have 4 years left to live, why me? Chen Xing. Xiang Shu could tell that the situation didn't seem right and suddenly shouted. Chen Xing immediately received a shock and gathered the heart lamp's light, using it to guard his heart by forming a warm, bright light around it. Go! Chen Xing shouted and withdrew both hands. He grasped the knack of using resentment to control the magic weapon and began manipulating it. The yin-yang mirror rose into the air and spewed out black flames, then began revolving high up in the hall. Strange runes appeared all around it. The sound of Viang Palace's main entrance collapsing traveled over from the outside. How long more? Feng Yunjun shouted. I don't know. Chen Xing roared angrily, I don't want to answer any questions from either of you anymore. End chapter.